developing or doing IT projects, right? People initially, of course, they were hiring developers. They had this new field, they had some money, they had this need for an application. They went ahead and hired a developer to build an application for them. And some of these applications worked, some of these did not work, right? So why? Because they realized at that time, these people, these business owners, department heads, they were not, because of lack of exposure, right? They did not know what IT was capable of, right? What different kinds of applications can they build? So not knowing the scope of IT, they did not really have that kind of vision that we have nowadays, right? The fact that they wanted an application itself was a huge, big vision in itself. Another thing was there was no industry jargon, right? So the business had something in mind and they explained it their way. The IT developers, because they did not belong to the business, right? They did not know how the business unit is doing what they're doing. They developed it the way they understood it. And many a times there was a gap, right? Yes or no? Do you think if you were to walk up to an electrician or a plumber, and if he were to start talking in his language, right, whatever he's doing, will it make sense to you? No, right? Same here. So many a times it did not make any sense. So what happened was the applications that were developed, sometimes it was not exactly what the business was looking for. Then again, not everyone could hire somebody that was really good at development, right? Not every person, no two people are alike, right? And same applies for skills. So sometimes they had an application that was rebuilt very well, that stood the stand of time, and sometimes the application was very short-lived, right? But it had a very short life because when times changed and they wanted to add more functionality, some of these software were not capable of adapting to time and change, right? So there was this understanding that in order for us to build proper software, right, to be able to utilize the technology available, there should be a proper way of building things. It must be thought out well, planned ahead of time. We must know what is it that we're building for. Pretty much the same way as we handle our non-IT projects. So there must be a concept, there must be a life cycle, right? Similar to the project life cycle. So with that in mind, the SDLC was proposed. Now the SDLC stands for Software Development Lifecycle. As it also stands for Systems Development Lifecycle. You may ask why, or why do we have two? Well, initially, all these different various companies were building individual softwares, right? Everyone was building softwares. So it was software development lifecycle. But recently, right, and we're not talking about 6 months or 2 years ago, we're talking about 10, 15 years. In the past 15, 20 years, we have companies that have specialized, like, Oracle, IBM, they have specialized tools. They pre-built the software for us. Now we only have to integrate it within our system, right? If that is the case, are we really developing a software? No, but it is still a software project, right? We're customizing that software. Hence, we're developing the system, okay? And so, SDLC stands for both software development as well as systems development. Is that clear to everyone? All right. Now, if it needs both, what does the SDLC do? Like I said, it's standardized. It provides a standard, okay? It provides a framework. It is more of a constitution best practices. If you had a software project, what are the various steps that you should go through in order to build a software? You don't develop first, right? So before you build a software, you must first figure out what is the software about, right? How long do you have to build a software? Correct. Again, so it's the same concept of how do I structure, plan, and build, develop, or control the process, right? You just can go into development mode. When you go straight into development, that's the cowboy style of development. Okay. Again, let me give you an example here. If you just showed up at the grocery store without having a list of items that you really need, does it take longer for you to do grocery shopping, or does it take the same amount as you would if you knew exactly what you wanted? Longer, right? So same here. And sometimes do you buy stuff that you don't really need and forget stuff that you need because you don't have a list? Exactly. So if you get home and you realize you bought something that you didn't want and you forgot something that you really wanted, did you think that grocery trip was fruitful? No, right? The same here. That project was unsuccessful. If you have gone into development mode first without planning, without knowing what is it that you want, without knowing if what you want is actually going to meet your needs, right? So we must organize our development effort as well. We must control it. There must be a framework, right? And that is what the SDLC provides. Are you clear so far? That's right, Ryan. Now, when the forefathers, when they proposed the SDLC, right, the concept, this was more of a theoretical piece. This is what they proposed, the different stages that one must go through while developing a software. And because it was a concept, they pretty much based it off the project life cycle, because they realized that the phases are almost similar, not exactly the same. And they gave it different, the phases, for the phases, they gave it different names so that we don't confuse it with the project life cycle. Of course, some of the activities are also slightly different than what we do in the project life cycle, okay? So the SDLC, the concept of the SDLC that was proposed had 6 phases in it. Those 6 phases are initiation, requirement gathering, analysis, design, development, testing, and operations and maintenance. Okay? In here, implementation or development takes on a totally different, it's a totally different concept altogether, right? We're talking about IT development, coding. We're not talking about building an engine or, creating a battery or whatnot. Here, the phases, the means different, the activities are different here. Everyone clear? Per then, within each of these phases, what are the various activities that you are supposed to do? Again, note the similarity, all right? In the initiation phase, you must initiate the project. In order to initiate it, first, you must understand, why are we building this software? What is the need for this software, right? And when you say need for this software, if there's a need, it means that you're trying to solve a problem. Yes or no? Fix a problem. That's why it's called a solution. Everyone clear? When you have looked at the problem, right, you defined it, then you must figure out what are the options, how can I solve this problem, right? So if it is an IT project, what are the possible solutions? I can build the software. How? I can build it in-house, I can outsource it, right? Or I can buy a software. Yes, no, maybe. Sometimes you may have to evaluate all three of these options. Within these options, again, you may be able to buy it from 3 different companies, right? You may want to evaluate 3 different companies to buy it from. You may want to evaluate 5 different companies to outsource it to. So you will have to look at your options. How do you do that? Anyone heard of the RFP and RFQ process? No? All right. RFP means request for proposal. RFQ means request for quote. When we have a project, right, it could be any kind. It is advertised in its own special way, all right? Even non-IT projects, construction projects, construction companies must put a bid. Have you heard of it? You must put in a bid, a tender. The contracts department will always put out and advertise that we have a project coming up. Similarly, even for IT projects, we have IT brokers, okay, if you tell them that we have a project coming up, they will advertise it, similar to our job board, right? Anybody interested can look at that you know, description and submit a proposal, can bid for it. That's right. Now, when we bid, or when these people bid, it is a proposal. Now, when is it a proposal versus when is it a quote? If I know what I want to build, but I don't know how to build it, I may ask these companies to submit a proposal. How do you plan to build it for me? That's a proposal, right? It could be any way. Now, sometimes a proposal, right, it could be anything. Like, for example, I'm planning to build a navigation software, right? That is what I want to do. You propose, how are you going to build it, using what technology, how will it look, what not. So I want your proposal. If I like your proposal, then I will ask you how much are you going to charge me for it. All right. So proposal is kind of very similar to the science fair project, right? We put together a proposal, right? We build our own robot or aircraft or whatever, whatnot. Yes or no? So they would like to see a concept of how you plan to build the solution. That is an RFP process. Sometimes I already know, right? You've already built this, you have the software ready. I just want to know a quote from you. Meaning to say, you don't have to propose anything. I know you will have this pre-built. I know how your system works. Now tell me how much is it going to cost me. It's kind of the same thing as you could go to one of the websites, right, and order something, or you can go to Amazon, order the same thing. So many times there are retailers or brokers that will give you the same product for half the price, right? One of the common examples is in the IT industry is you can go to IBM and IBM can develop it for you, or you can go to one of the IBM partners and they can develop it in half the price for you. Have you heard of any of those IBM partners? Or any of these other companies that can build it for you in half the price? Oracle partners. RFP, request for proposal. Shout out, there are many, all right? Cognizant. Then we have Headstrong. We have a couple of other companies as well, called Infosys. These are partners, alright? If you have any kind of, they're partners with a couple of major companies. So if you have any kind of IBM development, they can do it for you. They have partnered with IBM. In many cases, they've partnered with Oracle as well. If you have any kind of Oracle development, they can do it for you. You don't have to go and get an Oracle team to do the development. Have you heard of Infosys? All right. So there are many companies who can do it. Again, there are also smaller companies. All right. All these consulting companies that you hear of, Bain, Team, how are they doing it? Same story. All right. Everyone clear? Now let's go back to our RFP process. If I like, so, maybe 10 companies have submitted a proposal. I can review those proposals and I can eliminate some. Of the few that I have shortlisted, I can ask them to submit a quote. That process is called the RFQ process, request for a quote. Now, when I say request for a quote, I must call them and talk to them. Why? I need to definitely meet with them, right? Just because they proposed it doesn't mean that I am going to, and they give me a quote and I don't even want to meet them, right? That's not how things are done in personal life as well as corporate life. So if I like their tender, if I like their proposal, I will invite them to talk to me. And while they're talking to me, I will give them a little more detail. Do I want to publish everything in all my details in the description that I give out? No, right? I just want to give you enough information so that you can give me a proposal. But that proposal or that solution will have to be tweaked according to how I want things to be built for me, right? It has to be customized to my needs. So when you come down to meet with me, I'll give you some more details of it. Based on those details, you will then give me a quote. In that quote, whatever discount you want to apply must be applied. Okay? That is our final understanding of what can you do for us, how much is it going to cost you. Once I have that quote, I am going to take a look at it and say, well, which of these are feasible? Which of these solutions or options that I have now are feasible? Now, in order to do a feasibility, remember, what did we say? In the project life cycle, we said I must have a time frame in mind. I must have a budget in mind, correct? So if I only have $500,000, a maximum, I can't go a cent above it. And if one of the options is going to cost me $560,000, do you think that is feasible? No, right? So I am going to, of course, I have some rough numbers in mind. And based on those rough numbers, I am going to look at the feasibility picture, right? What is the cost of each option? How much am I going to benefit from each option, right? And based on that, I'm going to rank all of these options and figure out what is the feasibility of each. Are you clear so far? Now, when we do feasibility studies for an IT project, remember, we've already established that this is technologically possible. And yes, we want to build an IT software. The solution is going to be a software solution. So that part is already taken care of. Are you clear? Everyone clear? Okay. Once I have ranked all my options, I have a recommendation to make, right? This is option number 2 is the most feasible, most viable. Well, if that is the option that we go with, I will put together the schedule. What does that mean? Well, remember, every option there must be a timeline attached, right? So if whether it is Infosys or Wipro or TCS or Akeem, right? Whichever company it is, they must say how much are they going to charge me and how long will it take for them to build this solution for me, right? Starting when. So I am going to put together, if they said that they can build it for me in 4 months, then I'm going to start putting together a project schedule. What that means is, yes, it can be done. And if I start on the 15th of September, then these are the tasks that we must do. This is the time frame that it will be done. And we can go live in 4 months' time. Does that help? That is your schedule. Now, in your schedule, when you list your tasks, that is called your work breakdown structure. All right? And for every work, task, or activity that you have in your schedule, somebody must do it. So while you are putting together your schedule, you must also assign those same tasks and activities to somebody. Now, can you just assign it randomly without knowing if this person is even going to be available? What if I'm planning to take a break, backpacking through Europe in 3 months' time, and you've assigned something for me? You think that project schedule is worth anything? Is it true? Yes, no, maybe, guys. Is it a true project schedule? If you've assigned it, no, right? So what do you have to do? In order to put together a schedule, you must also reach out to every individual stakeholder group's manager and get a commitment of the resources, right? So if you need 2 business analysts or 1 business analyst, or you need 2 developers or 5 developers or 5 testers, whatever it may be, you must reach out to the managers and say, well, this is what we are planning to build. I think we will need 2 testers for it. You tell me, what do you think? And who is available? Who can you assign to this project? So you get a commitment. You get resources allocated. The manager will know upfront, right? Who is available when, and who can he assign as a backup. What if you were to fall sick, right? Then who is going to be your backup? Once you have those resources committed, then you can put their names on the schedule. So if I am the developer, I know that in 2 months' time, I can't take any vacations. If I need any vacations, it must be now or after the project is over, right? So I know my capacity, what is my capacity, and my capacity, we've done resource capacity planning. All right. So when I say put together a project schedule, there are lots of other activities that also happen in the background. Are you clear so far? And that leads to my next bullet, which is staff the project. So when I have all these resources approved for me, I have staffed my project, right? Now I have a proper plan. I know what is it that I'm trying to solve, what are my objectives, right? I know what are the options, how can I solve this problem. I know how long will it take and how much is it going to cost me, as well as who can do, what are the different tasks and activities that need to be done in order to solve this problem, and who is going to be working on those tasks and activities, and when. I have a proper schedule as well, right? Once I have this information, I have my business case ready, yes or no? Once I have that business case ready, I am going to put it all together in a charter or an initiation document and present it to my stakeholder that you hired me as a business analyst, right, to launch or do some initiation activities. And this is what I have come back with. The sponsor is going to review what you have put together. Always remember, there are checks and balances in the corporate world, right? So even though the sponsor has budget allocated to him, he can use the money any way he wants, but still he must justify the use of the money, right? So when you put together your schedule, you put together your, the estimates, right? How much it's going to cost you. All those projections must be presented to the board of directors, right? As part of that checks and balances, right? And this group of people must approve that yes, the solution that you're building is actually, yes, this is what we need and seems like a good plan. Sometimes there is also a technology governance council, a group of people who evaluate your proposals, right? The initiation document, and say, is it worthwhile? Do they think that the company will benefit from this? So yes, you will be able to meet your project goals or the goals for this year, but does it also meet the company's strategy over a longer period of time? So, their stake in it is, I understand it will help you meet your objectives for this year, but it is not in alignment with what the company wants to do in the long term. So maybe you need to figure out a different approach. And that is when the Technology Governance Council can reject a proposal and the project can get scrapped, which means that you've got to now come up with a different solution to meet those goals and objectives. Remember the goals and objectives that we talked about in session 1? All right. Okay? So it doesn't mean that you don't have to meet your objectives for the year. It just means that you'll have to come up with a different plan on how to meet those objectives. However, if the board of directors or the Technology Governance Council, if they like your plan, then the project is launched, all right? And it officially goes into the next phase. If the project is scrapped, then the cost of, the initiation phase, remember, you were working on the project, right? You did a lot of work on it. You had the legal department or whoever it was, right? Contracts department put out an advertisement that you needed a request for proposal. You spend so much time meeting with all these different vendors and stuff. So there is a cost involved. Any activity done on that project, there's a cost involved. As the project gets scrapped, then the cost of the work that was done so far will be charged to either ongoing and maintenance, all right? There's a separate bucket for it. Sometimes that in order to find a proper solution, you may have to go through some trial and error, right? Hopefully not too long, you don't go down the path for too long, but upfront whether this is good or not. So you may not be able to capitalize on that project. However, once the project is approved, depending on the size of the project, it can be a capital project, meaning to say, are you going to capitalize? Are you going to track every money, every cent spent on this project to the return on investment or not, right? There are some projects that you do as part of, O&M projects, meaning operations and maintenance, so they are not capital projects, all right? You don't expect any benefit. You don't expect anything new, right? You must fix it. You must enhance this too. So there's both kinds of projects, some that are capital and some that are non-capital projects. Are you clear?
Pooja, sorry to interrupt, but when you're saying RFP and RFQ, you're talking about that's outsourcing, correct? Or is that also done by BA?
The RFP and RFQ process is outsourcing, all right?
Okay. When you say initiation phase, you're talking about in-house projects.
It can be anything. That's what I said. One of your options can be build it in-house, another one can be outsource it, and the third one can be buy it.
So who decides?
We internally decide it. All right, so if you don't have resources available to build it in-house,
Okay.
or if you know for a fact that Oracle has already built a suite of products, right, then you don't want to reinvent the wheel. Can you build something that's better than the Oracle product out there? Possibly not, right? Not unless
Right.
you have that kind of expertise and that many years. So Oracle did not develop something in 1 year or 6 months. They took their own time, right? They probably built a product in 6-7 years, but that's all they've been focusing on. They built a product, now they're marketing it. Now, do you have 6-7 years to build something similar? Probably not, right? So you don't want to reinvent the wheel, and that is why you would say, well, you know what, let's buy it. So
Okay.
who decides? We'll talk about that later. First, learn about the SDLC concepts, okay?
I'm sorry to interrupt. My only question is I didn't know if management has something to do with it or does that fall on BA's lap from the beginning. That's why I was wanting to clear that.
Right. No, that's fine. Absolutely. And we'll talk about more in detail. Remember, today I'm just teaching you the concept, okay? We're still in fundamentals. However, today is more specialized, as in we're talking about IT fundamentals now. But who is doing what? So even in this previous slide, there are lots of activities that are done by BAs, some that are done by project managers, some that are done by stakeholders. All right? So we're not breaking down who's doing what. First, we need to learn what are the different activities that are happening in each phase, and then we'll break down as to who is doing what, which activity. All right?
Okay.
Okay. No problem. Any other questions, guys? All right, so this slide here, this picture especially, is put together so that you can remember the sequence of events in the initiation phase. So this line that you have on the left-hand side, this is where the business owner has reached out to the PMO office, right? And you are involved. They talk about the concept. What is it that they want to build? You understand why is there a need for this project? What is it that they want to build? What are the available options, right? Are we talking about buying the software? Of course, we are talking about the software solution, right? What do they think? And you're talking to the technology team. Remember, they are also stakeholders, right? We talked about it in our session 1. IT team is also a stakeholder. It is not a sponsor. It's not a business stakeholder either, but it is an IT stakeholder, right? So you will talk with your IT team or IT manager and understand what are the options, which options does the IT manager think are the most viable? What route should we go with? Now, once you have understood it, you must also define the scope. Scope definition, do you remember that piece, enterprise analysis? Define scope, everyone? So before we even advertise, right, or we reach out to the IT team and say, give me a project schedule, right, or who can you assign to this project, I must define my scope properly. So if I have to, right, if we're going to do this project in-house, I will figure out what is the size of the project, what is the scope of the project. Once I have that, then I am going to figure out what are the options available, right? So even when we are building it in-house, there are different options. You can do it one way or the other way, right? There's nothing that is black or white. That there's only one way to build it. So there could be 2 or 3 different options. Again, if you are going through an RFP process, then you must define your scope, because the proposal that they submit will be based off the scope. If you ask the architect to build a house for you, his estimates are the proposal is going to be different. If you ask for him to build a palace, then his proposal is going to be different, right? Do you think he's going to submit the same design or propose the same thing for both, whether it is a house or a palace? No, right? So it depends on the scope. So you must first define the scope. Once you have the scope, right, then based off that scope, your internal development team can give you options. The vendors, whether it is outsourcing vendors or people that are vendors that have pre-built software, they will give you options. Once you have that option, you must evaluate what is the cost of each option and what are the benefits that you get from each option, right? Once you do that cost-benefit analysis, you will figure out which of these options are more feasible than the others. You can rank those options, right? You will also evaluate what are the risks per option. Yes or no? That's the only way to understand, right? What is the best option that, or what would you recommend? Once you have those options, and based on your project management office, right, PMO guidelines. Now, if the guideline says we are going to build the software this way, or these are the techniques, these are the documents that we follow, depending on those documents, you will put together a plan. Part of that plan is your project schedule. In order to get that schedule, you must first get your resources, estimates, everything approved. Yes or no? Once you have that, you put together your project schedule and all the other related documentation. You present it to your business sponsor and the various stakeholders. These documents are then reviewed and the project is either approved to go into the next phase or it is scrapped. Are you clear so far? Now this diagram, guys, is to help you understand how you don't have to remember all of this, all the bullets and what I said. Okay? You can put together a diagram for yourself. Guys, please mute yourself. Okay? You can put together a diagram so that it will help you remember if you are a visual person. So the remaining slides that I have, I don't have diagrams for you. But if you are a visual person, please create one for yourself. Okay? Everyone clear? Okay. So if the project gets approved, then we are officially in the next phase, which is called the requirements gathering phase. Now, the same applies. Remember, what did we say? Requirements planning first, right? You've got to do requirements planning and communication, right? So you must know what are the different techniques that you would apply to gather the requirements, right? How to do that. So you will, part of your, before you get into requirements gathering, part of your initiation, even though you don't have, Brian, I can hear you.
Oh, sorry.
No
I'm
problem.
sorry.
That's okay. So while you're still in the initiation phase, right, you are still doing a lot more work. However, not all of it is a deliverable. What you have on the screen, on this slide, is your deliverables, right? But you are doing, in order to get to those deliverables and move on to the next phase, you are doing your pistol analysis. You are doing your most analysis. Yes, no, maybe. You must also do your SWOT analysis to remember or to understand what is the best approach to gather requirements, right? So when we say pestle analysis, or remember, if it is a regulation, if it is a federal regulation, a new law that the government has passed, like for example, the Medicare law that Mr. President just, approved, right? It went through. Because of that law, the way our insurances work changed, correct? Which means that all the software must be tweaked. That in order for that law, right, it has to apply. Yes or no? So the way the softwares work in future, what percentage of the monies will be paid by the insurance companies? How much are you going to pay? What deductions will go to which? However it works. All those changes must be made, right? So you must based on your personal analysis, you've got to read through the information. Read through is observation, yes or no? Document analysis and observation, right? So you will have to come up with your strategy. You will have to come up with what are the techniques that I need to use for my requirements gathering phase. Once you've figured out those techniques, then when you are officially in the requirements gathering phase, you will apply those techniques to gather the information. All right? So whether it is document analysis or it is observation or requirements workshop or brainstorming, whatever it is, you will gather the information. Once you have gathered the information, what do? What was the next thing that we have to do? Analysis, right? We must analyze the requirements. That's right. So first we will analyze it. So we know what the business requirements are. Now we will have to break it down into functional, non-functional, technical, user, implementation requirements, right? So technical requirements are system requirements, right? And everything else. I mean, you will analyze the information. You will also group, classify, prioritize your requirements, right? Part of that is going to be Moscow analysis as well. Must have, should have, could have, won't have. What did we say? Characteristics of good requirements. It is only stuff that people need. So do you think won't haves will be on the requirements document? No. You must prioritize it. Yes, when we put together our requirements, we have a whole huge laundry list, right? Which of these requirements are critical to meet the project objectives? If they are not critical, then they are supporting requirements. You need them, but it's not critical. So must have and should have are pretty much, the most, highest ranking requirements. The should have, the could haves are nice to have. If we can build it, it would be nice. But it's not going to really, it would be nice. It's going to probably help us meet some other objectives, right? Or support the objectives. But it's not a must. It's not compulsory. If we can't build it now, that's okay. We can live without it. All right? However, the won't have is, well, this is really my dream, that we will have this capability as well. Not that it helps out with the objectives, but I would really like it. Well, that is a won't have, right? Because I would really like it is more of a personal thing, right? Every time you have a new manager, every manager has his or her own personal preference. Has nothing to do with the project, has nothing to do with the objectives, right? So we must prioritize our requirements. We did talk about Moscow analysis in our last session, right? No? Must have, should have, could have? I thought I did. Alright, well, you have it now. Must have, should have, could have, won't have. I have 2 to 3 people saying yes, the others saying no. Please play back the recording. If not, we have discussed it today. Alright? So when you prioritize the requirements, remember another way to gather requirements is prototypes. Right? We did have that prototyping. Now, once we have all of it, part of our analysis is also, what is it? If we have conflict, we've got to figure out, right, how to resolve that conflict. Is that also called evaluate alternatives? Yes or no? Can you see it? When I have a conflict and I'm trying to work around it, find out another way to resolve the conflict. Is that called, can we term that as evaluate alternatives? Right? Now, of course, we will have to document it all because it being in our head has no value, right? 1, you may forget it. 2, you may quit your job. 3, No one can read your mind. So they don't know if you have it all, right? So you must document it. When you document it, 8 characteristics of good requirements. Remember? Everyone remember that? Again, documenting it without having people to review it, meaningless, right? So you must make sure that everyone signs off on it. You must review it. How do you review? Remember the technique that we use? Conduct review sessions? Yes, no, maybe. That's correct. All right. So once we have our business sponsors and stakeholders, everyone has reviewed it. They sign off on it. Once they sign off on it, we have met the deliverables of the requirements gathering phase. We are now officially in the next phase. Always remember that just because you have until the end of next week to finish a document, but you have, everything went really smooth and you have everyone sign off today, it doesn't mean that you can sit idle until the end of next week. All right? That's not going to happen. If everything signed off and on time, you officially go into the next phase. All right? You can't take a week off. It means the project must keep going forward. If it means that you deliver a week before time, that's great. Everyone clear? So the project then goes into the design phase. In the design phase, the people that are involved primarily are the IT development team, right? The architects. Remember the 3 kinds of architects? Who can name them? What are the 3 kinds of architects that we have to do the design? That was session 1, guys. Solutions architect, enterprise architect, and database architect. Right? So in the design phase, they will put together the design or the blueprint of the software. This is what, when we say propose, submit a request or request for proposal, this is the proposal, the design document, all right? A high level. So here in the design phase, if you are officially in the design phase of it, it's not high level, it is at a very granular level. They will propose, they will put together how the solution or how this enterprise is going to look or how is it going to work, right? It is the blueprint of the solution that you are building. Are you clear? Now when we say blueprint, what are we talking about? As far as software is concerned, we're talking about how will this application work, where will it reside, right? Which server, what communication protocols, what other applications are, things that will it talk to printers and fax machines and whatnot. How will the software be built? What technology, what platform, right? How will people use this software? What are the user interfaces? How will this software talk to other softwares, other applications, other nodes, components? Servers talk to databases, right? Website talk to server, etc. Yes, no, maybe. How will the databases be built? How will the information in the databases be stored? How will the information from the databases be accessed? All right? All that must also be designed. Is there any diagrams? Of course, all this, right? Well, if I just explained it to you, if an architect was to just explain the structure of the house to you, will it make any sense? Not to you, but even to a plumber or an electrician, without looking at a diagram? No, right? So is there any prototypes? And remember, a prototype can be a 2D model also, right? A diagram, anything. All those diagrams must also be built, okay? Any system control. Have you noticed when sometimes you have errors, right? Whether it is Microsoft Word or any other application, says you get a system error saying error closing out this document or error running such and such application. Did you want to log an error message? That is system control. Anytime the application fails, right, a message must be sent out to the development team, production support team, or whoever, right, and an email message that such and such application failed or such and such task failed. Right? That is a system control, so that somebody can look into it and say, why did this fail? Everyone clear? Now, why do you think that happens? All of us have downloaded music, right, on CDs. And it's not the norm anymore, but we also play DVDs, right? We go to the Red Box or Blockbuster and rent out movies. Yes, no, maybe. Sometimes the movie gets stuck, right? Or the song starts skipping. Sometimes when you load the software, when you're installing or, when you're trying to open up a software, it doesn't work. It gets an error message and you've got to uninstall and reinstall. Yes or no? Why? The files can get corrupted. Okay? So when the files get corrupted, you have an error message. If there were no system controls, then nobody would be aware of something failed. Right? Can you imagine if you were selling stuff online, you're taking these orders, and your software that sends these orders or the financial transaction information, right? If that code was corrupted, you're taking these orders, but the transactions are not getting posted, right? And no one gets notified. Do you think you would still be profitable? No, right? So somebody must monitor every system, correct? How will that, who will monitor it? What is the mode for monitoring, right? We must plan for that as well. Is it going to be an email notification? Is it going to be an alert somewhere in the system itself? Is it going to be an error log, right? It must be figured out. It must be put together in the design phase while all these different architects are putting together the design of the solution. Are you clear? Now, all of these 7 activities are critical, irrespective whether you are building it in-house, the application, or you're buying a software or asking somebody else to develop it. Always remember, all of these, the package that you get, must comprise of all of these different activities. If the software you buy does not have system controls, ask for it. What are the system controls? How will we know what went wrong? Why did it go wrong? Right? Ask for it. Clear? Now, once the solution design document is ready, right, people are supposed to review it and sign off on it. Now, the solution design document, while we're still in the design phase, many companies, they have two, a high-level solution design and a detailed design. The difference between the two is, in the high-level solution design, you just have the design component. In the detailed design, again, remember the mad scientist example that I'd given you earlier? That before you actually start mixing your ingredients or the chemicals together, you must have the formula written somewhere, right? Yes or no? Anybody remember a little bit of the organic chemistry that we did in middle school, high school? Maybe some of us in college? I'm sure all of you, right? Science experiments, you must write down the formula first, solve the problem on paper before you actually do it, even your physics experiments, right? Yes or no? So same applies to the solution design. So based on the solution design document, the developers are supposed to write down the code on paper first, right? And ideally, somebody should review that code to say, yes, this is the right way, this is the correct way, or this is the most efficient way of building this code, right? So it must be on paper first. Paper, and I don't mean literally, but it must be documented somewhere first, right? Why? Because that's the proof of concept. Are you clear? That yes, you can build this software, you can program a code for this functionality per the design if you wrote the code this way. Now once that, again, that document must be reviewed by the development team. It is not going to make any sense to me, it's not going to make any sense, or as a business analyst, it's not going to make any sense to me as a project manager. I don't know how to read a code, I don't care. And even if I didn't know how to read the code, remember, it doesn't matter one whit what my opinion is. Ultimately, it is the business, the IT developer's job to review if this code matches what the development team, what their strategy is, what their design standards are, development standards are, right? So none of it, even if they share it with us, it will not make any sense to us. The development team will or should review it and approve it. Once that document is approved, then we go into the implementation phase. Sometimes they only have a solution design document, and they don't officially have a detailed design document, okay? It changes from company to company. When we get into the implementation phase, this is where the IT developers will start actually coding on their development environment, okay? So they have a dev server and dev databases, development databases, their own sandbox as we call it, and they start writing the code. Now sometimes when they write the code, right, they have it documented somewhere and they copy it in the sandbox. It may or may not work. If it does not work and they've got to rewrite it, they're playing around with the code, and if they figure out a different way to code for it, they must go back and update their detailed design document. Are you clear? Deepti, who reviews the detailed solution design document? It should be reviewed by the IT, the development team. Whoever it is, it has to be a peer. Sometimes it can be a peer that reviews it. Sometimes it could be your architect that reviews it. Sometimes it could be your manager, depending on the roles and hierarchy of the company, okay? So in the implementation phase or development phase, this is where the developers are they're doing their coding. They always do the coding in a sandbox or on the dev environment, development environment. Once they are done doing their code, they must verify that this code works. They just can't assume that simply because they've written a SQL sentence or a statement, C++ statement, that it will do what it's supposed to be doing. They must do unit testing, meaning to say they must verify that their code, whatever it is for, that it works. Once they have done it, if they had to go back and edit some of the prototypes or develop a prototype, again, the development team must do that as well. if we are going to upgrade, right, if the project is about upgrading, then data must be converted from a lower version to a higher version, right? It must also be migrated. Yes, no, maybe. So that must also happen in the development phase. The developers, while they are developing the code, must also put together notes on how this application must be supported. So they should have clear instructions on, if you have this issue, if you run into this problem, if you get this error message, please uninstall these files and load these again. If you get this message, such and such message, then please, then check here and turn off this agent and turn it back on. If you get such and such message, then you must refresh your database. So they must put together the document. Are you clear? They will also install the system. So the code, if the developers feel confident that this code works, then the code is going to be installed on the test servers. We copy the code and we push it to the next layer, which is called the test layer. All right, this is where the test layer is where the testing team will test it. Why? Because if while they test it, the system crashes, then the code is not lost, right? When you crash your laptop, you pretty much lose everything that's on your hard drive, right? So what if the testing team tested in sandbox and the system went down? The entire code is lost. So instead of, just having to fix a piece of code, they'd have to rewrite the entire code. That would be a very lengthy process. That is why testing is always done on a separate layer, which is the test environment. Are you clear? Many times we have, even at companies, we have the sandbox. Then we have the test layer for the developers to do the unit testing. Then we have the UAT layer, all right, for SQA and business analysts to do their testing. And then we have the production layer. Once we all feel satisfied that this works, then we can launch it on everybody's laptops, or however the software is going to be accessed. Until then, it is only available to those who log on to those environments. So again, it changes from company to company. Some companies only have development or sandbox, and then we have test layers in production. Others have sandbox, development, test, UAT, and production. All right, everyone clear? So once we have installed the software, right, on the test layer, testing activities must begin. The sequence of testing is that the developers, if they have finished the unit testing successfully, is the code moved on to the next layer, right, for testing, irrespective of what that test layer is, whether it is test layer or UAT layer, whatever. Now, the testing phase comprises of two major groups doing testing, the SQA as well as business stakeholders. SQA testing, right, that is the kind of testing where they check the software. Did the developer build all the features that this software was supposed to have, that was requested in the requirements document, right? So if the testing team finds 10 features listed in the requirements document, are all those 10 features available? And then they will go into every requirement and say, well, does this requirement or this feature work the way it's supposed to do as listed in the requirements document? Okay? Are you clear? In order for the testing team Anybody, irrespective whether it is SQA, software testing, or UAT testing, in order for us to test, there must be test plans, test scripts, right? And then we must be able to execute, do the actual testing. There are different kinds of testing, not to be confused. Remember, unit testing is always done by the developer. In the testing phase, application testing, integration testing, backup, recovery testing, documentation testing, white box testing, black box testing, regression testing, all of those are done by the SQA team. If and only if the SQA team feels that this software has passed the acceptance criteria, and I'll explain the acceptance criteria to you in a minute, only then does it go into UAT. Otherwise, the software is deemed as failed, and the developers, depending on the company, either must fix the issues or the project is sometimes scrapped because it is so horribly done that there's no way that you can salvage this product. Are you clear? So acceptance criteria, what does that mean? Remember, I just talked to you about must have, should have, could have, won't have. When we document our requirements, we only document the must have, should have, and could have, right? Of the must-haves and should-haves, remember, the must-haves are critical to meeting the objective of the project objective. So it is almost a must that all of those requirements must be bug-free. If they have a defect, if they're not working as designed, or how we wanted it to work, do you think we will be able to meet our objectives? No. Same applies. We should have. They are not critical, but you really do need to have them for whatever reason, right? So if I'm selling products online, right, it is not critical. It is not a must-have to have a secure site, correct? However, do you think the customers are going to log in on an unsecure site and buy products from you? Yes or no? Do you think anybody would go to an unsecure site and buy products? No, right? So this requirement that this site be secure is a user requirement, and it is a should have. It is not critical to the project, to the objective, right? This does not help the objective in any way. However, if we don't have this requirement, then we will still not be able to meet our objectives properly. Are you clear? Everyone? Yes, Nehal?
Pooja, I still want to understand what is the difference between the unit testing that the developers do and this testing thing.
Okay. All right, but let me ask you this. Did you understand the difference between must have and should have?
Yeah, I did.
Okay, let me finish this concept and then we'll come back to unit testing.
Okay.
So, when we, so same goes for could have, right? Now, not all could haves are nice to have. Some of them are nicer to have, right? On a scale of 1 through 5, you would really like to see some things more than the others, right? So, when we put together an acceptance criteria, depending on the company, depending on the kind of project that you're doing, we must establish what can we compromise on, all right? Can we compromise on our must-have requirements? Can we compromise on our should-have? What is the level of compromise or the degree of freedom, as we call it, for each of those categories? Sometimes you may say that 90 to 95% or 95% of the must-haves and should-haves must be bug-free, right? which means that I will only take any of the list of 10 must-haves and should-have requirements, right? So if the number of bugs that I find are 5%, right, then it is acceptable. Are you clear so far? But it means that 90 or 95% of my total requirements, must-haves and should-have, should be working properly, right? Depending on whatever. It could be 90, I could say 95, I could say 98% or 100%, right? I could break it down. I could say 100% of my must-haves, 95% of my should-haves, and 65% of my could-haves, whatever that breakdown is. So it gives me a parameter, right, on when I do my testing, which of these, which were the critical requirements, and do the critical requirements meet the acceptance criteria? So I'm going to look, what did I have for my critical requirements? Do I want 100% of them to be working properly? If yes, then is this product, when I do my testing, did it actually meet that criteria or not? If it didn't, I'm going to fail that project right then and there. If it passed, then I'm going to look at the next set, right, of my should-have, and so on and so forth. Everyone clear? All right. Now back to Nehal's question. What is the difference between the testing done by the developers and testing done by the testing team? Well, just because I have, Nehal, and I'm going to give you an example. Let's say I'm the cook. And just because I have cooked something doesn't mean that I don't have to taste it to check if the salt or all the spices are proper, right? I must taste it first, yes or no? And then in a restaurant, they always have a taster. Before it goes out to the customer, the taster must come and taste it to make sure that this is correct. Yes or no? Now this happens at 5-star restaurants only, granted. It does not happen everywhere. But ideally, that is the process, correct? That's why we have the various levels of chefs at the restaurant, right? The sous chef and the head chef and whatnot. Yes or no? Are you aware of that concept? Okay. So look at yourself. If you are the developer, just because I wrote a SQL statement or C++ statement or a Java code, it does not necessarily mean that it works. Correct? I must test it out, verify that it actually works. How? Have you used Excel spreadsheet, Nehal? Have you used the formula function? Sometimes we write some formulas. Just because we've written a formula doesn't mean that it works, does it? We sometimes get an error message, right? That this formula is incorrect. So that is the unit testing piece. Just because I've written a code or a statement doesn't mean that it works. I must verify that it does. That is unit testing. All right? What the testing team does is it will check for the entire product. It will look at the application, right, and verify, one, whether this application has all the features that the business had requested for. And how do they know? By reading through the requirements document, right? Next, they are going to check for every functionality. They will test the application itself, do all the pieces of the functionality. Each functionality works, and do all the pieces of the functionality together work as a whole, from end to end. So another example is, if you had a website, like if you go to Amazon or JCPenney, yes, the add to cart functionality works. right? You can add items to your cart, you can edit items to your cart. You can also create a wish list. However, can you, from the very beginning all the way to the end, can you do the entire thing from end to end? All right? So all the different units of code, do they all work? So when you create a profile with the shipping and billing address, and if you were to select that profile and you added items and then you go on to add the items into your cart, when you are reviewing your cart, does the correct shipping and billing address reflect there or not? Does the system calculate the correct taxes based on your shipping address or not? You understand, Nehal? Now, this is a different kind of testing than the unit testing, right? All right? Backup. What if the system goes down? Now, all the time, right, if you remember, guys, there are times when they're doing production, maintenance to the website. There are times when they're doing maintenance to the servers. There are times when they're doing maintenance or updating more inventory, right? There are times when, because of a network outage, right, systems are down. What happens? What is the recovery option? What if someone else is, or, there's a transaction that's in the process of being posted? What is the recovery option? What will happen to that information? Did it go to the backup server? Did it, fall back on the backup server or not? Did the information get posted to the, to the backup tables or not? If for any reason, let's say, if we are doing an address verification, and I'm giving you examples of things that you've used in the past, when you go on JCPenney or if you do any ordering online, right, your shipping and tax charges are based off of something, correct? How does it calculate? Typically, it goes to a certain, whether it is USPS, UPS, whatever the shipping service is, right? And it goes and makes a call and comes back and says, this is a real-time rate call, right? Shipping rate call. Yes or no? And you get a shipping charge. But what if UPS is down? My website is up, but UPS is making an update. So does it mean that I can't place an order because UPS is making an update? Have you ever had that kind of an error message? No. You know why? Because we always have a backup table. So if UPS is down, it will go to the backup table, which is a static table. But at least you will still be able to place an order, right? So in this instance, the customer may be paying $1 more or $1 less, right? But almost the same, ballpark. The only difference is, if it's a real-time rate call, then they take into consideration today's cost of fuel and whatnot, right? If it is a static table, then it is based off an assumption, right? $3 per gallon of gas, 50 cents of service charge, where in reality it could be 57 cents or $3.29 per gallon of gas, or 2.87 per gallon of gas, right? So there's a difference between static tables and real time. Everyone clear so far? So we always have backup, recovery. We always also have regression. Each time you put a new code, right? Something else that was previously working can also break. Have you ever seen that happen? It may not be with software. Or it may be. I've had it. When I've installed a new software, my total system crashed. Has that happened to any of you? You were trying to install a new software and it corrupted something else that was previously working? So which means that a regression testing must be done to see that everything else that was working fine is still working fine. Okay, so the SQA team is doing a lot of other kinds of testing, performance, right? So they have their own testing strategies and tactics. We don't care about them. These are just a few of those testing tactics or techniques that they apply. All right? And lastly, we have the user acceptance testing. So when the testing team says that this product meets the acceptance criteria, then we will ask our business units to do the UAT, which means that they will try out the system, do some of the things that they said they wanted to do, right? Features that they wanted this product to have, and they are then going to confirm that yes, the system is working as they wanted it to do, that it has the features and it is doing what they expected it to do, and that they approve of it. Are you clear? Once they approve of it, then you go into the next phase, which is operations and maintenance. This code is now pushed into production. What that really means is that if the software was supposed to be launched on 10 laptops, right, you need to have access to it, then this icon will be now installed, or this software is going to be installed on your laptop. If it means that this software is not now going to be available for you to use, so when you log on to your company website, this software, you can click on it, and it's on your main page, home page, wherever it is. You click on it, and you will be able to use it. That is what it means by putting it on production. Once you put it in production, remember the same thing can happen. Corruption of files, right? So many people using it so many times. It's the same thing with your DVDs. When the DVD is new, it works fine. Once it has been played by, X number of people, then it starts skipping. It gets stuck in certain places, which means that they must rewrite that DVD, right? So what else can happen? People may forget how to use this application. They may have forgotten their username, password. They may be logged out. Some of them will need to be trained on how to use the software, right? So all that happens in the operations and maintenance phase. Part of support is training these people on how to use the software, providing them access to the software. As and when they have issues, concerns, questions, helping out with them, providing them with the answers. If they have any new requests, anything that they want to change, well, taking a note of those, right? And of course, every so often, like your laptop, like your computer, you have to reboot your computer, right? Can you leave it, without rebooting it for a month? System becomes very sluggish after a while. Yes or no? The same applies. This is a software. So it will need constant refreshes, it will need constant maintenance, and that is what the support groups do. So we have, if you are helping the end users, resetting their passwords, giving them access, new people need access, whatnot, they reach out to the help desk, right? And then we have the deployment team that will take care of maintaining the computer system. Everyone clear? And of course, there's you who will train the users on how to use the system. Everyone clear so far? Okay. Now, when this SDLC concept was proposed, right, what were the advantages that they envisioned? It will allow, if you follow the SDLC, it allows you to focus on the goal being the objectives that you're trying to meet, right? That's the whole point of doing a project, correct? You're trying to meet a certain objective. And by focusing on the requirements, planning for those objectives, right? What are the options that are available? Planning for how to build that option, right? You're focusing on the goal. Yes, no, maybe. It also allows you to focus on your trade-offs, correct? If you know you only have 4 months to build this application, can you have a huge laundry list of requirements? If you have a huge laundry list of requirements, can you say that I'm not going to compromise on quality? You must compromise somewhere. There has to be a trade-off, right? So if you want 10 things done in half the time, then you can't have a very high acceptance criteria, can you? Quality stuff always takes time, right? So it focuses on trade-offs. You know exactly what you're trading off, what your trade-offs are. When you follow the SDLC, remember there are phases, right? Every phase has its own milestones. There are certain deliverables that you must do, certain tasks and activities, checklists, accountability. People are assigned to those tasks. So there are controls. Did we do this task? Did we do it in time? How efficient were we? How was our performance? Correct? So not only can you evaluate the project performance, but you can also evaluate the performance of every project team member. Yes? Does everyone agree? The SDLC also provides you as part of, there are certain tasks and activities that you must do and follow. In order to do those tasks and activities, we know what are the techniques, right? In some cases, it also tells you what tools to apply, what diagrams or models to use, right? CASE stands for Computer-Aided Software Engineering. So when we have tools and techniques, it's not just for business analysts, right? Those tools, techniques, models also apply to the other team members, which means that there are tools and techniques and tactics for developers, for testers, etc. All right? SDLC, clearly, because you're breaking down, putting together your work breakdown structure, right? You know the hierarchical decomposition. You have this objective. In order to do this objective, meet this objective, you need such and such solution. What were your options for the solution? Well, which solution did you pick? What are the features of the solution? In order to build the solution, what are the different tasks and activities that you must do? Who is assigned to which task? So there is a total hierarchical decomposition here, correct? And lastly, by just following the SDLC, you know who's supposed to be doing what and when and how, right? So managers, users, everyone knows what's the next phase, what should we be expecting, who's supposed to be doing what, correct? There is no reason for anyone to be confused. Well, when am I supposed to start developing? Well, where are we in the SDLC process right now? Are you clear? Just because we are following the SDLC doesn't mean that we are guaranteed that this project will be successful. There are no guarantees. Is there any guarantee that just because you're following the traffic rules that you will never be in an accident? No. SDLC is kind of your traffic regulations, right? SDLC is the framework. So you have the lanes, you know your speed limits, when are you supposed to give what kind of indication and what not, where can you move from one lane to the next, all that, can you cross double lines or not. So it is your guideline, right? However, if you don't follow the process properly, there are no guarantees that you will always be successful. What are those instances where you may still fail? If your scope is not defined properly, do you think if your scope is not defined properly, then you will have a proper project plan and a proper budget estimate, time estimate? Will you ever gather requirements properly if your scope is not well defined? No. If people who are working on the project, the entire project team, if they don't have proper skills, if your stakeholders don't know what they want, can you document the correct requirements? No. If your developers don't know how to develop properly, right? Not all developers are good developers, right? Or the testers, they don't know how to test this application properly. Do you think the project will still be successful? No. If we as business analysts, if we don't analyze the requirements properly, if we don't ask the proper questions, if we don't document it properly, if we don't have, meet the 8 characteristics of good requirements, do you think the developers can read our mind and still develop something worthwhile? No. If there's no control of framework, for example, you're driving down the road, yes, it says speed limit 45 miles per hour, but you know for a fact that no cop is ever going to give you a ticket. Will you ever, how many of you will still drive within speed limits? Knowing that no one will ever give you a ticket, even if you speed. How many of you? Honest answer. Right? So if there's no control, if there's no one to discipline you for not doing it in time or proper performance, if no one's going to hold you accountable for not meeting your target deadline, do you think people are going to meet their deliverables on time? Or even if they did, that it would be quality deliverables? No. If management, right, if they don't follow the SDLC properly, if we are not involved in the SDLC, right, all of us must contribute. So when each of us drive conscientiously on the road, right, we add to the traffic safety, right? We add to it. Yes or no? All of us are involved, correct? So all of us must be involved in the SDLC process. If there's one team that is not involved, do you think that still the project will still be successful? No. If you are if you're focused on just, you're taking too long to do the SDLC process, right? You're so focused on one thing, you're trying to get perfect. Well, that's not the way to be, right? Yes, you want the requirements to be perfect, right? But you can only do your best in a certain time frame. Can you wait forever? No, right? So you do the best that you can in the time frame that you have. It may not be ideal, but remember, you have to keep moving forward. So with the information that you have, you must do the best that you can. All right? Don't say, if only I had one more week. That never happens. All right? So if any of these bullets, if you are stuck on any of these, then there are no guarantees that your project is going to be successful. Everyone clear? Now the concept of SDLC, remember, that was the concept that was proposed by the forefathers of the IT industry, right? And the concept was great. However, can you imagine, we have NASA, we have the Air Force, we have, U.S. Army, U.S. Navy, we have JCPenney, we have Oracle. They're different units, right? Different companies. We have the banks. They all have software. Different kinds of projects, right? Yes or no? Yahoo, Gmail, these are all software companies, right? All of them, some of them are not software companies, and yet they have software within. And they're all building software. They all have internal IT departments, or they have software development processes where they may be outsourcing it, right? Can you imagine? There's different kinds of projects. In some projects, they're purchasing a software. Do you think there's really a design element involved? Do you get to choose the design of an Oracle application? No, right? However, look at NASA. They do have an elaborate design phase, correct? All that software. Did you read recently this app? This this is most recent. Let's see if I can. Did any of you read this last week? Yes or no? So it had software, right? What does it mean? Do you think this software was written previously? Or do you think that they had to design it from scratch? Of course, this is prior to sending out rovers, right? However, they must have just done it from scratch at some time, right? They couldn't have just bought it from Oracle or deeply. They may have a backup, but at some point they must have designed that backup also, right? It is not right then and there, but maybe a year ago they must have designed the software. So that project, when they were going, remember this is the launch of the product, right? They've launched this rover, but the development, the project happened prior to launch, right? So even the backups and everything must have been designed prior to launch. So do you think the way this project was done is similar to the way that you would install a Microsoft software on your laptop? Do you have any say on the requirements, features of that software that you get, the Microsoft products? So do you think the same SDLC phases apply for both software projects, the software project for NASA versus the software project, the system development SDLC project for Microsoft products that you did? No, right? Different kinds of projects, different kind of industries. Now, some of those Microsoft products, we do get error messages, right? Yes or no? Did not launch properly, closed, it did not save the files properly, right? Do you think the same applies to this NASA software? If anything fails here, this entire 2.5 billion science mission is lost forever, right? It's going to blow up within seconds. Yes or no? So, is there any way, can we safely say that the SDLC concept, the vanilla version of it, right? That vanilla version, that concept can be applied without any tweaks to any kind of IT project. Can we say that? Generalize? No, we can't. There is no one size that fits all. Okay? Why? Because they are totally different kinds of concepts, totally different kinds of projects, totally different kinds of industries, totally different kind of domains. Right? Some projects, some software, it is okay. You can live without. So if you have a website and you get a internal server error, right? Sometimes the images don't load properly. Is it mission critical? Yes or no? Guys, yes or no? It isn't critical, right? If the image does not load properly on JCPenney, right? So different kinds of projects, that's what I'm saying. So when we have different kinds of projects, we must tweak the SDLC so that it meets our needs. it applies to our industry, it applies to our project. That leads us that the concept was great, but the concept is a concept, right? How you apply it is totally different. So with that in mind, we kept the SDLC concept, but we created some variations along the way. All right. So another example for it is, when you download a recipe, right? Have any of you downloaded recipes? Now, when you get to downloading the recipe, right, and you actually start creating that dish, how you do it, right? Sometimes you may substitute some ingredients with others. Sometimes you may tweak the level, right? Some people like it really hot and spicy. Others may like medium spice, or yet others may not like any spice at all. So how you tweak the spice levels, yes or no? Certain ingredients. But also, if let's say this recipe calls for chopped onions for the sauce as well as for the for the protein as well, right? It's up to you whether you want to chop the onions or whatever the ingredients are in batches, one time for the sauce or the other time for the protein, right? Or you wanted to do it all at the same time, correct? The same here. So we have the SDLC concept, and we have various variations, right? We tweak the concept itself so that it meets our needs. Now, these variations are called methodologies, the method of following the SDLC. Some of these methods are more famous than the others. When we have certain methodologies, right, what we're doing is we're tweaking the basic SDLC concept. Because we're tweaking the basic SDLC concept, it also means that we may have to change the names of the phases so that people don't get misled. We may, because we're changing or we're tweaking the phases like we did for the project life cycle, instead of having planning and strategy one phase, we broke it down into two phases. Same here. We may break it down into multiple phases, or we may combine a couple of phases together. Then we may have new names for the phases, or we may stick with the same phase with the name of the phase with the understanding that you're doing the activities of two phases in one. Irrespective of which methodology you use, the tasks and activities pretty much remain the same. Did it change between the project life cycle with the 6 phases and the other one with the 7 phases? Did you see any difference? No, right? So the activities remain the same. How and when you do it may change. All right? Why do we have variations? Like I said, because of the industry, because of the domain. What does that mean? Well, some industries, you want to develop something really fast. When you're developing something really fast, you have certain trade-offs, right? So there are some methodologies where the SDLC, right, is tweaked so that you can develop the software faster. Other methodologies are variations where you can develop something, the quality of the product is really high. Yet others can be methodologies where you're following the SDLC process in a way where the customer satisfaction is highest. Are you clear? So methodology, same story, right? It is a method of following the SDLC. SDLC was the concept itself, and the method or that you follow, that the method that you use to follow the SDLC is a methodology. Methodology is a combination of models, tools, and techniques. The techniques are really the step-by-step instructions of how you go about this SDLC process, right? What is the method, the step-by-step instructions on how to follow or how to do this project using the SDLC. Okay, are you clear? So where I said some methods, you are combining some of those phases. So instead of 6 phases, you may only have 4 phases. So what are the step-by-step instructions? What are the different phases and what do you do in each phase? That is your technique. Clear? So as I just said now, once you have these techniques, what are the models that you should be drawing or creating? Models are representations or abstracts, right? It could be charts, diagrams, analysis, anything. Anything that helps you visualize, understand the concept better. Are you clear? Common examples of models are Gantt charts or your project plans, your net present value, return on investment, class diagrams, UML diagrams, right? Flow charts, anything, mock-ups. Are you clear? In order to draw or make these models, you need certain tools. So even for you to do your feasibility study, your net present value, return on investment, your risk assessment, you need certain tools. Whether those tools are Excel spreadsheets with macros in it or formulas in it, or they are software tools, right? It doesn't matter. Whether those tools are, again, Excel spreadsheets so that you can draw those mock-ups like I did in our last class, or you use UML or modeling tools, it doesn't matter. Whether you use Excel spreadsheet or a Word document to analyze your requirements or to put together your project plan, or you use Microsoft Project, those are tools, right? So Microsoft Excel or Word is also a tool that you can use. You can use Microsoft Project, and there are tons of other project tools as well. Yes, no, maybe. The same applies. There are tools for business analysts, there are tools for project managers, there are tools for developers, there are tools for testers. Okay? Everyone clear? All of these different methodologies, you can pretty much bucket them. You can classify them in one way or the other. So there's one approach where we call, you can group them by traditional approach or object-oriented approach, and there's this other way to classify your methodologies, which is plan-driven or change-driven. So there's a difference, guys. Just because I say traditional or object-oriented and plan or change does not mean that change-driven equals object-oriented, okay? So pay attention. There's one way to classify, which is traditional approach versus object-oriented approach. In the traditional approach, right, which is very structured, you have an engineering approach, which means that you must plan first. Everything should be on paper, and then you only execute. All right? Yes or no? Before we buy a car, we plan first, right? We put it down on paper. What's the cost? How much are we going to pay? We do our analysis, right? Before you actually go and build it, same goes. There are many places where even companies, right? They have a 5-year plan, 2-year plan, and then they go about executing that plan. That is the traditional approach. When you have a traditional approach, your requirements are always based off what you can afford and in how long you have to build that solution. Okay? So your plan will regulate what your needs are. If you only have $10,000, then you will only get what you can what you can build in $10,000, right? That is the traditional approach. Now, another thing in traditional approach is the business can only say what they want. How it is built is totally in the hands of the development team. All right? So me as a user, I have no say whatsoever in how you give me this functionality, how it works. I just need this functionality, whether it is, I need to see this. How you give it to me, I don't care. All right? Object-oriented approach, on the other hand, is different. Object-oriented approach follows that if you want to build a good product, quality product, you need to know what your requirements are, and it is your requirements that will actually drive the cost. So if you need 10 things, and if those 10 things are going to cost you $1 million, then so be it. These are your requirements. So it's not the cost that's driving the need, it's the need that's driving the cost. Are you clear? Do you see the difference? And how can we tell that, Deepti, what in object-oriented approach, it is the need that drives the cost. Okay? So if you need 10 things, then the cost of those 10 things is what is your supposed cost, all right? Not the other way around. You can't say I have $10,000 or $500 and I need, all 10 things. You can only get whatever you can in those $500, right? In object-oriented approach, it is the need that drives the cost, not the cost that drives the need, all right? So that is object-oriented. In object-oriented approach, how do you know how much will this need cost me? You have to analyze every requirement, all right? And that analysis is called object-oriented analysis. You must design you will have to design using object-oriented design, and you'll have to do object-oriented programming to understand the level of the cost. All right? So you've got to apply object-oriented analysis, design, and programming to actually derive the true cost of the product. While you are analyzing every requirement, you are also telling the developer how you want this feature to work. So you're splitting hairs. You're not telling the developer what kind of code, what kind of platform you want it in. But you are telling the developer how this functionality should work. All right? So you are providing more details than just saying, I want this functionality. You're being very specific on how this feature works. Now the difference, again, example, there are some TomToms, there are different kinds of TomToms, right? All of you have seen TomToms? Yes, no, maybe. The navigation system that you use in your car? Right? So, some of those TomToms, right? It's almost the same functionality, same feature in all of those TomToms, right? Now, if I simply said I want a TomTom or something, a software that will give me the route, the developer, it's up to the developer how he develops it for me. It could be a very complicated system. It could be a very simple system, right? Yes or no? So if I were to follow the traditional approach, all I need to tell him is, what is it that I want the system to do, the feature. In the object-oriented approach, I will be very specific on what or how this feature will work. I want it simple. I want it to be touchscreen. I want it to be this. I want it to happen in 3 clicks. Are you clear? So that is the object-oriented approach. Now the other distinction is plan-driven and change-driven. Plan-driven, there are some methodologies that are very, you stick to a plan. Those plans do not allow for any changes. So if for any reason you have to make a change, you've got to modify your requirement, you've got to modify your project plan, it is not allowed at all. Those methodologies are plan-driven methodologies where change is frowned upon. And any methodology where you are allowed to make changes, it is okay. Change is part of the methodology. This methodology allows you to incorporate change, whether it is because of customer feedback or whether it is because you want to improve the quality of the software. Whatever it is, anything that allows change to be incorporated is bucketed within or called change-driven methodology. All right, which is not the same as object-oriented approach. Are you clear? These are some of the methodologies that we would have learned tomorrow, but I think we will learn next Saturday. All right. The current trends, waterfall is the most popular methodology across the globe. Spiral is an extension of waterfall. Agile, Scrum, especially, is the new and latest thing. Not that it is new methodology, it's been around for 10, 15 years. It's just that it has gained momentum in the recent years, okay? And the rational unified process is the golden methodology. You will always be asked about one of these 4 methodologies. You must prepare. I don't even care about extreme programming. You can strike this out as well. But waterfall, spiral, Scrum, and unified process, you must know these methodologies like the back of your hand. All right? So while I will teach you 6 to 7 methodologies, these are the 4 that you must properly prepare for an interview. Everyone clear? Okay. So with that, we have which 4? Guys, let's see. Right here on my screen. Waterfall, spiral, Scrum, and unified process, okay? All right, so with that, I have come to an end to today's session. Any questions before I end my session?
Yes, I have a couple questions.
Sure.
In addition to like reviewing your presentations on the recordings, are there any other like readings and stuff we should go through? Because I know that we got links to certain, I guess it's called BA materials. That's what it's called in the Google Docs. Anything specifically that we should read over to kind of be prepared for next week?
Yes. So as and when I teach, I want you to go through the BA materials, find the relevant topics, information, and read up on it. I will also be posting more information on the blog. So in addition to my slides, please go to the blog, look up additional information that is there, and you will have tons of information. Right? By the end of close of day today, there will be about 6 to 7 pages of information on the blog for you. Right?
Okay.
So read through that, read through the BA material, go find out more information on the topics that we've covered so far, and read through those. Once you have done that, absolutely you can go ahead and read up the relevant information in the BABOK. But as I said before, BABOK don't just rely on the BABOK, okay? The BABOK is not going to get you anywhere. You must go through my information. Yes, go ahead.
And we can, post any comments or questions we have on that same blog.
Absolutely.
All right.
Absolutely. That is why we have the blog. Anytime you have a question, please post it here. All right? Remember, my commitment to you comes first, you and the other batch. So I have people from the previous 6, 7, 8 batches. Every once in a while, they'll send me a question or a note, right? Some of them are in between jobs. They've left the first one. They're about to go in for a second one. Some have just, the ones that I've just finished, they are now posting their assignments. But my commitment is to you guys, my present batch. So anything that you do, we want to do it while we are in session. Any questions, clarifications, doubts that you have, please ask those while we are in session, because I'm focused on you right now. All right? Are you
All
clear?
right. Yes, thank you.
Maybe the PowerPoint slides are on the blog as well.
I'm sorry, is that all of them or after your lectures?
All of them are there.
Okay, thank you.
All right?
I didn't know.
However, Nidhi, this is what I've said in the last class as well. I don't want any of you focusing on taking notes while you are in session, because the mind can only do one thing at a time. Either you can listen to me and process the information, or you can take notes. If you focus on taking notes and you're not listening, which means that you will have doubts when you go back and play back the recording. I would much rather you focus on listening and understanding. If it does not make sense to you, ask me to repeat. All right? Once you've understood it, then you can print out the slides, and while you are going through my recording, you can take notes. It solves two purposes. One, it reinforces what you've learned, what your mind has processed. And two, it forces you to go through the recording. The way the mind works is retention is only 10%. So only 10% of what you've heard today will be retained by your mind. So you better make sure that the 10% that you've heard, you understand it properly well. And even the others, that you understand it well. You may not retain it, but you at least understand it. So when you play back the recording, it will all come back to you. So when you play back the recording, it reinforces, you will remember an additional 20 to 30%. All right? Then you may take notes. Writing also enforces, right? It takes up. I'm sure all of you are aware of it, right? How the mind works and how we remember stuff.
Yes.
So the more often you see, read, the better your chances of retaining. So focus on hearing and understanding what I'm saying while we are in session. Take notes later. So even though the slides are there, I don't know if you've printed it out or not, but the way it has, the way I've seen it work for me, and I've mentored at work as well as, through Zantech. The way it works typically is you pay attention in my class and then do the notes later. All right?
It just sometimes helps me to write down some of the steps so I could connect. And that was the only reason I was asking. Usually don't take notes, but sometimes you're talking about examples. I would like to write it down. So if I have the slide, I could connect on what you were talking about. So that's about it.
And that's fine. Whatever works for you. I'm just giving you in general what works, all right? But every person is different. If that works for you, go ahead. Whatever works for you, I really want you to succeed. All right? That's all I really care about.
Thank you.
All right. So, Deepthi, do I conduct sessions in the week also? Well, Deepthi, honest answer, I do have another session during the week. However, if we go any faster than this, you will not be able to process the information and do my case studies. If you think, I don't know if you feel that today was a lot of information, but trust me, it is only going to get more intense in our next session. All right? And the intensity, the level of complexity only goes up. So next week, around next week, we will have to do case studies. You cannot, so one example I give everybody is, you can get three pregnant women, right? But can you still deliver the baby in 3 months instead of 9? Even if you had 3 pregnant women, Deepthi, it will still take 9 months, right, to deliver any baby. So if you do it any faster, it's not going to help you. You must go through the process, okay? You must understand, process the information. You will have to do the case studies. Unless you do it, so there's a difference between understanding the concept and really knowing how to do it. There are many times when people rush into things, they know, how to provide the answer, but the actual execution is where they fail. So you don't want to be in that boat, right? You don't want to be able to crack that interview and then once you have the job, not be able to actually execute, right? So we will have to go through, understand all the methodologies, and then have to go through the case studies and whatnot. All right, let's see. There is, again, this is something that I have mentioned in the past as well. The certification, none of you can get certified, right? The CBAP certification that is there, yes, you need 5 years of experience at the very least to get certified, right? So there is none of you can get certified at this time. Even the CCBA, which is an associate kind of degree, will require 2.5 years of experience. I wouldn't recommend any of you fudging your resume and doing anything. Trust me, it's not worth it. 2, it's not possible. All right? Simply because you will have to list all your projects and how many hours and which company, and you will also have to list your manager's name. So if you get caught, you will be blacklisted. I wouldn't do that. Secondly, it is not required that you be certified in order to get a job, right? So why lie if you are not, if it's not even required? You will find an entry-level job and a decent paying entry-level job, even without lying, without any kind of manipulation, all right? So I don't think any of you need to be worried about certification at this time, all right? Any other questions? No? All right. For those of you who have not yet had a chance, okay. See, their website is not working. Something's wrong with their website. All right. So with that, guys, I'm going to end today's session. Please go back and play back all the recordings, come up to speed, and I will talk to you all next Saturday. So no class tomorrow morning. I will post it on the blog also that tomorrow's session is canceled. All right? However, going forward, there are not going to be any more cancellations. Okay? Thank you, Lipsy. I am glad you enjoyed it. So no more cancellations. Please, guys, please catch up and come prepared. All right, take care. Enjoy the rest of the day. Bye.